Yes. All right. Well, this is a fabulous day. Would you not agree?
Yes.
And the weather is phenomenal.
Yes.
It is beyond words out there. Yesterday was good. About halfway through. A little rainy and drizzly in the beginning, but not bad. All right, so let's begin by welcoming our Facebook Live community this morning. We welcome you to Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Boston. And as you already know, I am Reverend G. Stewart, and along with Reverend Ed Tansey, we are the ones who were allowing Spirit to express as us, as this community of joy and peace and perfection. And look what we attracted. Yes. Isn't it beautiful? Yes, absolutely. So we are indeed a joyous and spiritual community, and that's what we're all about. And so we ask our Facebook Live friends that if you are being spiritually fed by our message this morning, to please include us in your tithing and circulation practice. And you can make your donation right there at cslboston.org. You can also learn more about our philosophy and what we do here. The Science of Mind is the study of life and the nature of the laws of thought. Here we are choosing to co-create a magnificent life with the universe. Would you agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And even when it's not so magnificent, when you just stop and say, I have a magnificent life, it can shift where you are. Can it not?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Do you not find that to be true? All right. So, we here at 50 Dudley Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts are joyously expressing as Center for Spiritual Living Greater Boston. And the 2019 CSL theme is Spirituality in Action. This is an awesome reality for this entire year. That is what we are doing. This month is diversity. I promote diversity and inclusion. So for April, we are promoting diversity and inclusion. That's a big thing, right? So today what I want to talk about is unique but different. Unique but different. What does that mean? So as I have mentioned before, that our theme of spirituality in action is coming from the prophetic justice principles. And those come from Reverend Dr. James A. Forbes Jr. From Riverside Church, which can be found online at our website. You can see all of the prophetic principles, and that's what we're following as this idea of spirituality in action. And his prophetic principles were about how we can promote that in our world. So the first one that the one that we're dealing with this month is actually the number 3. It's his third one. And it is promote unity and inclusion. Does the policy hold the prospect of reducing the polarization and fragmentation of society due to race, religion, class, gender, sexual orientation, or national origin? And we could go on and on, right? All the different isms out there in the world, so that how we are all showing up. And that's what's so great about that reading that you had this morning from Masando. And Masando is a friend of ours. We actually went to ministry school. We were actually the party room in ministry school. Can you believe that? And in ministry school, he came down to party with us, along with several of the other students of that particular time frame. So, but we had a lot of joy in that. So, and in the world today, we see a lot of appearances of polarization and fragmentation, do we not?
Yes.
In our leaders and in the words and the policies that are being brought forward. So, but our work is in consciousness first and the world second. That's where the power lies. Because if I do my conscious work first, it's easier for me to show up in the world no matter how the world is showing up for me, right? When I start there. So ours is to let spirit, the thing itself, or the universal scientific principle, or whatever name resonates with you for this divine presence, we need to go there first and then show up in the world from that place, because that is how we can see beyond the limitation and the separation that the world brings. Would you agree? Absolutely. All right, so today what I'd like to speak to you about today is I'd like to speak to you about one planet, one mind, one life. Just a small thing. I want to talk about, am I inclusive, yes or no? question we need to ask ourselves. And what can I do to live my uniqueness, promote inclusion of each one's uniqueness, and embrace diversity? So those are the three big topics. So what I want to start with is this idea of one planet, one mind, one life. Now think about this. There are 7.113 billion individualized expressions of the one mind, or humans, as we like to call them, that are currently sharing this one planet. That's a huge number. It's amazing when you think about that. And of course, we can give or take a million here or there, I'm sure, but it's that number is so amazing when you think about it, how big this planet is that it can support all of that. It's amazing. Now, we as humans, we like to divide it up into things. So we say, oh, there's 7 continents, there's 195 countries. But guess what? All share the same day and the same night sky, depending on where we are in the revolution of the earth. Would you agree? So we're all sharing that sameness. Oh, and by the way, we all breathe the air. We all sing and play and laugh and eat, and if we're cut, we bleed. So all of these things we have in common. There's our commonality in humanity. So despite the appearances of being separate, we are more one than we realize. Would you agree? And that includes how we show up in the variety of forms, beliefs, genders, or gender identities, or classes, or religions, or as I like to say, all of the isms that one can think of, right? We show up in so many. But despite all of these isms, or this ismness, the many differences, Ernest Holmes reminds us the following. The infinite one manifests in infinite varieties, each rooted in the one, the capital O1, but each divinely unique in its own right. Good, bad, high, low, across, above, and beneath are all one to the infinite mind. So no matter how separate we may think we are, the divine mind knows us only as one. Isn't that amazing? But it's also experiencing itself as each of us individualized too. So that's even more powerful when you realize that. So thank you for that slide, Reverend. So this means that we are being called to be inclusive in our world of affairs. Would you agree? Because if I'm to recognize that oneness, that idea of the one mind, then I really have to be welcoming and inclusive of all my fellow humanity. And it's tough sometimes, I understand, absolutely. But it's really just taking the time to work at that. So that's when we need to ask ourselves this next question. Am I inclusive? Yes or no? And so from the book of the month for April, which is a beautiful book, it's The Stained Glass Spirit, Becoming a Spiritual Community Where Oneness Does Not Require Sameness. Now that was written by one of our own, Reverend practitioner, Tracy Brown, who is also, interestingly enough, the chairperson of our Centers for Spiritual Living Leadership Council. But she says this in her book. A stained glass spirit community is one where each person is recognized as a unique expression of God, or whatever name we choose to use for God, and their individual strength and beauty become essential elements that contribute to a lively and inspiring collective experience. Do we do that here? Yes. We do that. We definitely do that. But it's so powerful when you realize. And sometimes that lively and inspiring collective experience is sometimes not so pretty or a little prickly, but that gives us an opportunity to grow, does it not?
Yes.
To expand into what is it that I need to know about myself that brings about those prickly feelings. Right? And then from there we can grow into that greater inclusiveness, right? So this is why we need to know about our inclusive or non-inclusive nature. Asking ourselves, am I inclusive or not? So here is a test that you can use. Here's like 5 points that will help you, or 4 points, that will help you to kind of like test your idea of how inclusive you are. So number 1 is, do I use inclusive language? Instead of saying, like when you come up to a group of people of all genders saying, hey guys, could we say, hey everyone? So we're not putting it into that gender-specific guise, because if I walk up to a group of individuals, and there are men and women, and I say, hey guys, I'm assuming a general gender. And we don't realize that we're using these phrases sometimes that are not inclusive in their languaging. So it's very important to realize our languaging and think about, is my languaging inclusive or exclusive? So it's really important to look at those things. So, number 2 is, do I find ways to admire the differences found in groups of people that identify differently from me? So here, I'm talking about embracing the differences that are brought by the many isms that we see in the world. I feel very blessed that my mother, although she was very Christian in her beliefs, was one who was very inclusive in her behavior. In a time when there was still a little energy of segregation mentality. When I was young, there was still that kind of thing going on. She was one who would embrace everyone. We had everyone in our home. We welcomed everyone in our home. So it was I felt very blessed in that. And I thought that that was a way for that. That's why I enjoy people, and I enjoy finding out about how their unique experience is, most especially if they have a different religion or a different belief system. For me, I love that. It always opens up greater consciousness. And even those who are maybe not agreeing with me on certain levels, I love to get into a conversation to better understand where they're coming from, so that I can open that idea. And then here's the third one is, do I reach out to include or even champion those who may appear less fortunate than myself? This is a big one. This is a lesson that I learned from doing the Walk of Privilege. Has anyone done the Walk of Privilege? Yeah. It's powerful. Rev Ed and I experienced this at a minister's retreat. And so what happens is, in this Walk of Privilege, you start standing shoulder to shoulder, facing one way. So you're all one long line of people, right? And they ask questions. And the questions that they ask are offering you to either step forward a step, or step back a step, or remain where you are, depending on your answer to that question. And I am telling you, by the end of those questions, and I think it was like 40 questions, I was moved to tears. Because I stood there and I looked back and I saw all of these people that I felt one with and connected to, and they were way back here and I was way up here. And that was the first time that I fully understood what white privilege meant. It was like, oh my word, what I had taken so for granted in my life, and that others had not experienced. And so, being so emotional at that moment, it was so wonderful that our facilitator, Reverend D. Jacqueline, she was so amazing. Yeah, I mean, this is an amazing woman, and I'll go on to tell you a little bit about her. But what she said was so powerful to those of us who were feeling, this pain in our chest because we were more privileged than our brothers and sisters that we had seen, and in this experience. And she said, those of you who stood at the front, use your privilege to stand up for others, to bring others into the fold. And that was so powerful. It just brought a sense of peace to my heart. I said, yes, that's what I can do. That's how I can be more inclusive. So I just wanted to say a little brief thing about Reverend D. Jacqueline, and that's that this is a woman that ended up taking a church in Visalia, California, and she is a black minister in an entirely white congregation. And I just love that. She stepped out of the box and became something outside of what people expected. So I just thought that was just such a powerful thing about her. And she is on our diversity and inclusion team for CSL. So she's very, very good at what she does. She's really amazing, so really love her. So the last one I want to talk to you about is, can I truly see the divine in everyone I meet? Right? And if I do, then I can be more inclusive, can I not? If I can. But that's the thing that we do here the most, is it not? You know, like when we start in the very first class of Beyond Limits, the deeply we are one, that practice that we had to do for the next week, and then we came back to that, and you know, look, everyone here has been in classes, so it's so powerful to realize that, and it changes how you show up in the world. Would you agree?
Yes.
It helps us to recognize our unity. So Ernest Holmes gives us some simple answers to help us to realize this. If our human relations are to mean the most to us, we must sense that there is hidden within, around, and through each of us a divine presence manifesting itself in infinite variations, the same impulse, the same love and life, but never quite alike in any two persons. And that's what it's about. It's about realizing that it's not the same in any two persons, but that all of this commonality is going on here. There is a divine presence in everyone, even those who appear to be out of alignment with that. It exists there. It's being covered up by limited fear and separation consciousness. So our job is to see beyond that. Would you agree? Because if I can see beyond that, I can open up the possibilities, not only for maybe that individual, but for people around me as I step out of my comfort zone. Would you agree? So seeing that variety and that beauty, that's what it's about. It's just so powerful. So this is diversity. And it is a gift that we all need to open with joy in our hearts. Would you agree with me on that? Being in that place of diversity. Now, interestingly enough, that the word diversity, some people have a problem with it. And I love that in our book of the month by Tracy Brown, that she says this about diversity. Diversity is not the problem. It is the stories we tell about diversity that are the problem. The stories that we tell. That's not only true of diversity, is it also not true of our lives? Yes, absolutely. So that's what the problem may be with diversity, is the story that we keep telling about it. It's not all that big a deal. Or at least it hasn't been for me as I've grown into seeing all as the one. And we grow into it all the time because we have lots of opportunities for us to work on that oneness, do we not? Because we keep getting those separation messages, and then we have to keep going, nope, I'm one. Separation. One. So you keep going back and forth, back and forth. So now that we've looked at how inclusive our nature is, we know where our work may be, where our spiritual work, where our spiritual practices may be around inclusivity and being in that place. So now we ask, what can I do to live in my uniqueness, promote inclusion of each one's uniqueness, and embrace diversity? So in this quote by Ernest Holmes, he gives us sort of a beautiful hint or an idea of this. Each individual, however, is a unique variation in the universe. No two people are alike, and yet all people are rooted in that which is identical. That's going back to that same idea, isn't it? He said this a lot. He said this a lot about that whole thing of us being one. So I think I think it also has to do with our ability to love ourselves just the way we are. Right? And that can be tough. Because society tells us we're not good enough. We're not this enough. We're not that enough. Right? We hear that all the time. tell you, if I watch all those advertisements on TV and believe that this latest cream is going to make me more beautiful or more this or more that, I'm like going, wow, who needs all that? Because I'm already perfect and whole and complete right where I am. Does not mean that I don't have room for improvement, does it? I can always improve. I can always grow into a greater experience of who I am. But it's important to remember to start by loving ourselves right where we are. And how many of us have trouble loving ourselves right where we are? Been there, done that. But each time we do, we open greater opportunity to fully embracing who we are. And by doing that, we can bring forward our uniqueness. Would you agree? And then I can also recognize the uniqueness of others, being inclusive and recognizing their uniqueness. So in the quote of the month for April, which is from Ernest Holmes, we come to understand the importance of loving ourselves and getting a greater understanding of our desires in life. And I love that what I did is I changed this to the more inclusive language, because Ernest Holmes, used man, which at the time was very common to speak of mankind, but they would use man. But I wanted to make it inclusive, because I think that we're talking about this inclusivity, and I think it's important to do that. So, humanity's three greatest needs are to feel that they are needed, wanted, and loved. Would you agree?
Yes.
So that's the first one. The second one is to feel that they belong to the universe in which they live. Is that not true? That's why we're here, right? And then the last one is, and to have an object or objects upon which to shower their affections. Right? To be able to give back what we're receiving. So we're being loved and we're giving love back. And that we belong in this universe. Isn't that powerful? Powerful words. And Ernest Holmes, he just nailed it so many times on these things. It's so awesome. He also points to the importance of being inclusive to each person's uniqueness in that. Because by realizing that we all desire that, we have to realize that all are desiring that, not just us, but all of humanity. As we all have these three needs that he talks about. It's so powerful. So, here is a way to empower our inclusiveness. And I want to do this with you today because I think it's a great little experiential. And I think you'll really enjoy this. Now, in Tracy Brown's book, she speaks of the Namaste or Ubuntu exercise. And that's what we're going to do here today. So, this is an exercise. Let me tell you also that Ubuntu means a quality that includes the essential human virtue, compassion, and humanity. Ubuntu. You want to say it with me? Ubuntu. Good. All right, because you're going to be saying that later. All right, so what I'd like you to do today is with this experiential, and I think everybody's a hugger here. Good, so we don't need to put anything up there about non-huggers, and that's fine too, because we don't make judgment on that, do we? Because it's each one showing up in individualized and perfect just as they are. So I want you to start by finding a partner. So let's all stand up, and let's find a partner. When you find your partner, I want you to look into their eyes, give yourself a little room.
This enough.
There you go. All right, so look into their eyes and say, Namaste, and bow.
Namaste.
Beautiful. All right. And now I want you to take their hands, and I want you to both take a deep breath together at the same time. And now I want you to hug, and as you do, whisper, Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
And now step back and look into their eyes. Awesome. You may be seated. Thank you. How did that feel? Did you feel connected?
Yes.
Wasn't that nice? I love that. I thought that was such a pretty practice. And it's a great way that we can practice it here where we know everybody, right? But in the world, it might not be so easy to do that. I don't think people would necessarily want you to be like, walking up to them and doing all those things. But if you think about it, we can actually change that to where we could do it silently within ourselves. Can we not? You can imagine those different steps. You can say the namaste within your head and imagine yourself bowing. Even if you don't make eye contact. And you might, which would be really awesome. Okay? And then just recognize their breathing and breathe with them for just a moment, right? And then you can take it to the next step. You can then, within yourself, imagine yourself hugging them and saying Ubuntu, and then just making eye contact and smiling. Isn't that powerful? I love that. I just thought that was so cool. And I thought, what a great practice. So this would help us to realize our unity with all of life. Would you agree? Because Ernest Holmes tells us that what unity means that everything draws its strength, its power, and its ability to live from one source. There's only one source. I don't care what you want to call it. There's only one source, and we are all using it simultaneously. Going back to that 7.113 billion people, all using it individually, one source. Wow. That's infinite. That even gives you a better consciousness of infinity, of the infinite nature of the universe, right? That power, that amazing stuff. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to conclude today by talking about a little bit about what I said, and that's that there's one planet, one mind, and one life, right? And we share that. We are constantly sharing that. And so it is important that when we understand that, to be inclusive or to check our inclusivity factor. Would you agree? So we need to realize, where am I not being inclusive? Because when I'm not inclusive, it's usually because I'm in fear or separation consciousness. Would you agree? So it's important to go in and really look at that and to do the work I need to do around that. And in that way, we can then embrace our own and others' uniqueness and feel and know more unity in our own lives and in the world. Would you agree? So, I can meet you in Ubuntu or Namaste. Namaste. So if you'll join with me in prayer, close your eyes. Just take a moment and move within, taking a deep breath. Recognizing this infinite universal source. This infinite presence and intelligence and creative energy of the universe. The allness and the wholeness that is in all things, as all things, through all things. This one power, this one presence is awake and aware and alive in all of creation, for it is expressing itself in that creation and as that creation right here and right now. And so I recognize and I realize that this power and this presence, this scientific principle, this quantum possibility field that I call the Mother, Father, God, is awake and aware and alive in all of creation, awake and aware and alive in me and as me and through me right here and right now. All that I am, God is, and all that God is, I am. And as I know that for myself, I know that for each one in this room, and I know that for all throughout the cosmos, for our Facebook Live family, for all, that there is a divine presence awakened right here and right now in this moment, and it is always and ever available to each one. And it is from this place of absolute oneness that I can declare and claim and know the truth for each one right here and right now, that there is a new and wondrous inclusivity and uniqueness expressing as each one into the fullness and the wholeness of life, of abundance, of health, of well-being, of creativity, of joy, of laughter, of music, of all of these things. For these are the gifts given right here and right now, to and as and through each one. And I declare and claim this good right here and right now. It is in this place of knowing this truth that I know that God is the Ubuntu, the Namaste. And so I just call forth this good for each life, for each one, knowing that it is the Mother, Father, God's good pleasure to give the kingdom right here and right now. I am in deep and profound gratitude, in a profound thanksgiving of the good that is absolutely awake right here and right now, in and as and through each life. And so in full thanksgiving, I can simply surrender this word, let it go, release it into the activity of the law, knowing that the law is always working, and is always providing, and is always giving of itself to and as and through each one right here and right now. And so I rest in this knowing. I rest in this knowing of this or ever greater good, already fulfilled in this moment. And I say, blessed be, amen, ashe, ah women, ah shucks, and so it is. I wake you up. So let's join together in our affirmation. This is from Reverend Sunshine Day in Downey, CSL in California, a dear friend of ours. And so the affirmation is, I see the sacred, I hear the sacred, I speak the sacred. All life is sacred. I love that. Let's do that again. I see the sacred, I hear the sacred, I speak the sacred. All life is sacred.